Good afternoon. Well, those who watch these videos are probably unaware that we haven't made any for 2, if not 3 weeks, as Phil has been away and there's been various things happened. So we're coming back after a break, and that means I've got a whole sheaf of questions in my hand which have been building up. So I've hard work to do this afternoon. And as always, especially when confronted by a difficult task, when I'm not quite sure how to go about it, I'm going to turn for help. Now, how do I do that? Guess what? Feet on the ground. Listen. I got this lovely river flowing past me to listen to. And look. In this lovely afternoon, no longer summer, but well into autumn, with the grass dying down and the first leaves beginning to turn. So, if you'll forgive me, and I hope you'll join with me, I'm just going to be silent for a minute or two. Just simply being present. I wonder how that was for you. Some people aren't used to doing that, and they may get a bit fidgety and feel a bit uncomfortable, but others may feel, as I do, peace, a sort of reassurance, a sense of safety, a sense of not being alone, almost like having an invisible friend beside me, who actually is not only a friend, but a strength and a guide. So now you see, I'm going to look at this sheet of paper where I must have 25 or probably 30 questions written down. And while we're deeply still and present, I'm just going to read rather quickly through them. And I wonder if you will pick up, we'll just see what we pick up. How do you think religious and non-religious could find common ground in personal philosophy? How are we supposed to solve problems in this world if we spend all of our time in the spiritual world, experiencing silence? How often should we meditate, practice? How can we deal with difficult situations which make me want to give up? Where do you go when you meditate? How do we know when advising a friend is not being arrogant, thinking we know what's best for them? And then this woman that writes, Avery, I've a big heart. Mel writes, how can I find motive to participate in the world of people when I'm attracted to God? Dylan, do you have to practice religion to meditate and find spirit properly? Ed, how can we stay in an unthinking state? Why was Jesus crucified? How can we deal with practical questions? Is it necessary to believe in God? That's from Shirley. Juan from Argentina writes, in meditation I experience a void. What then? Why do animals spend all their time reproducing and killing each other? Why do we try to be different? Coast East fella says, how do you keep calm in times of crisis? That questioner is a mother with children. John asks, can I believe in spirit but not God? How do we cope, control? And then the problems of being alone. Stephen asks, how do you deal with cruel words and judgments of others? Does it get easier? Well, questions, my dears. Did you remember to be present? Or did you forget? Because this is what happens, isn't it? Where do questions come from? Let's come back to being present again. Feet on the ground, listen and look. You may not be lucky enough to have a lovely river flowing beside you like we have, but I'm sure you've got something, even if it's a river of motor cars flowing past outside your window. Just listen to them without criticism. And what happens to the world of questions? It seems to be connected, doesn't it, with the world of being absent, the world of not being present. When we lose touch with common sense, in other words, listening and looking and feet on the ground, and we get into our heads, we get lost in our heads, and then this world of questioning becomes entirely real, becomes the whole scene, really. Yeah, I mean, questions are very important. Good God knows I'm not dismissive of them. I've been through it all myself, I assure you. All of them. I think I could have asked myself. But I'm not sure that I serve the purpose of making these videos best by really just sitting down and giving you a long list of so-called answers. Will you really be satisfied? Isn't it rather a bottomless pit of just endless, more and more of less and less? Where does it end, honestly? Do you know, one of the biggest books ever been written. What's it called? Encyclopedia, isn't it? God knows, there used to be about 30 or 40 volumes of a great big fat thing called Encyclopedia Britannica, which used to be sold to people with perhaps more money than sense, who put these things on their bookshelves and then thought, oh great, I'm on the ladder to it, to something better. Questions and answers, my dear. Perhaps it's just too much of a beautiful afternoon to worry too much about questions. Shall we leave them until a rainy day? Seriously. Well, to be a bit more general, dear, all questions of the how do you cope with sort of nature, yes, you can divide them, but at least half the questions are, how do you cope with? Well, there's one very simple answer. Naturally. Let me remind you, as I'm sure you've had the experience, when you were quite small. Well, I remember very well when I was in the army and they were trying to teach us to march. Now, you know, soldiers march left, right, and they swing their arm. They swing the opposite arms, so you're in rhythm, and the arms help the legs, and so you can march for a long time in perfect rhythm. Now, when young lads join the army, and when I was one of them, because you try so hard to do it right, quite often people start off putting their left foot forward and swing their left arm, so that you end up going like that. It sounds absolutely bananas, doesn't it? But that's what we often do when we try to do something very hard and want to get it right. Another example is learning to dance. I wonder how many of you have had dancing lessons and you were told to put your feet this way and that, and you get all, you fall over yourself. You can't get it right no matter what you do. You tread on your partner's toes and get into trouble. And then somehow you just relax about it, don't you? You forget to try, or something happens, and it's suddenly you can do it. You just find a rhythm. And another good example is learning to ride a bicycle. It's absolutely impossible. How on earth could you balance on two wheels? And then one day you can do it. Or like learning to swim. Well, dear, this is the world of trying to do something. Now, a key principle of the spiritual life, besides being present, is just to trust. To let go. Look at my hand. See? Just that. Trust. Just like on a lovely day like this, open up your heart and let the sun shine in. Isn't that the natural thing to do? And when we do it naturally, don't we all feel better? God bless the lovely sun. We all got smiles on our faces today because the sun is shining. So, remember that little word, naturally. How do I cope naturally? Look, how on earth do I manage to stay on my feet? Isn't that? How do I know? I don't know. I manage to stand up. Isn't it? The clever people will say there's something called gravity that keeps my feet on the ground, stops them floating off into space. Doesn't it happen naturally? How do we breathe? Well, how does my tummy know what to do when I put food down there? How do you know when to smile? How to smile? How to love one another? Naturally. How do fish swim? Butterflies fly? How does the water know what to do? Why does it flow from there to there, not there to there? Naturally. Another lovely name for God is providence. The Lord provides naturally. Naturally, my dears. That's how to cope with life. And if you're finding it difficult, just remember that example of if you weren't a soldier, at least I'm sure you've learned to try to ride a bicycle. How do we cope with this impossible world? Well, perhaps you don't have to cope. Perhaps you just make a muddle of it. Perhaps you never get it right. I don't think I have. Why should you? How to deal with difficult situations? God knows. Is there anybody in the world who knows? Even the politicians can't agree, can they? Who knows how to deal with difficult situations? We do our best, and life leads on. They pass, dear. Religious, non-religious, common ground. Look, here and now, presence. How many presences are there? One presence. Religious, non-religious. Well, look, different sorts of grasses on the ground, but they're all contained in the oneness, aren't they? In fact, we've even got the word grass, and grass contains all the hundreds and hundreds of different varieties of grasses. So why worry whether you're a religious grass or a non-religious grass? It's all contained, yes, it's all contained in the one. And it doesn't matter. Personal philosophy, whatever's that, I don't know. Well, sorry, I don't mean to dismiss the question, forgive me. I used to know very much what that was all about as I tried to figure out what to do until I learned to let it go. How are we supposed to solve problems in the world if we spend all our time in the spiritual world? Well, as I just said to you, naturally, it happens, doesn't it? How does the river wash everything clean? Now then, put a filthy something in the river and leave it long enough, and it'll come out clean, won't it? Where do you go when you meditate? Right here and now. Where would I go? Where can the sky go? Where do I go when I meditate? I know we've all got some funny idea of some, somewhere up there called heaven, sitting on a cloud or something. The kingdom of God's right here. You're never closer to God than here and now. Here and now. Where do I go from where I meditate? I come back from being absent. I return from the world of questioning, you see, and personal philosophy, and I think like this, the world of I think, which is absence from just being. I come back to being here. And I do that just by letting go all this questioning, seeking, making effort sort of mind, and just like sinking into a hot bath of just being present. Sinking into your lover's arms if you're lucky enough to have one. Wouldn't that be lovely? Wouldn't we know what to do naturally if someone holds out her arms to us like that? We'd just melt, wouldn't we? That's it, dear. That's the way. How do we know when advising a friend is not arrogant, thinking we know what's best for them? There was a great English soldier called the Duke of Wellington, who is reputed to have said, "Never give advice to anybody unless you're in a position to see it's carried out." And I recommend that to you. Be careful about advising, dear. There's safety in silence. I've a big heart, well, so have I. I've had to learn that lesson. I remember soon after I started to meditate, there were a couple of cases when someone died. They were older people, of course, and I wrote what I thought were helpful letters, and in both cases it came back to me that I'd offended them, and I was deeply hurt at this, but the lesson went home. You have to practice meditation to meditate and find spirit properly. No, dear, there's no have about it, but it may help. I've often said that I had 10 years of compulsory chapel and scripture lessons at school, and it gave me a good grounding. It gave me the language of religion, and I'm grateful for it. I really feel sorry for young children these days who are not given a basic grounding in scripture. I think Phil's making signs to me that I've gone on a bit too long. Shall I stop, Phil? Shall I continue?
New camera. Lots of space.
He says the new camera's got lots of space, so he's telling me to continue. No, about religion, well, I wouldn't say I don't like that word have to. I don't believe in compulsion. But it may well be advantageous to have some background in religion. How can you stay in an unthinking state? I can't, dear. Only anybody can. How can the sky stay without clouds? It isn't natural, is it? Well, if you think of thinking like clouds, which is a very appropriate analogy, why should you? What's wrong with clouds? What's wrong with thoughts? Why don't you want to have thoughts in your mind? There's nothing wrong with them, is there? Or do you think there is? Why do you want to be in an unthinking state? How dull that would be. No, dear, there's nothing wrong with thoughts. All you've got to do is just, as I've often demonstrated on these things, just learn to, here's thinking and questions and all that. All you've got to do is just like that. Just get into your own little balloon called meditation and just let go. You rise up, and there's the thoughts down there. Like when you're in an aeroplane, you look down and see the clouds. That's thoughts. There's no problem in them. They serve a purpose. Why was Jesus crucified? Well, I've tried to answer that in other videos, so I won't enlarge on that now. How can we deal with practical questions? Naturally. Is it necessary to believe in God? Well, I've answered that one also, I think in one or two of the last videos. I'm not too keen on have to, and I'm certainly not keen on is it necessary to believe either. Nothing is necessary, dear. In the real world, it's free, and there's no compulsion to do anything whatsoever. It's all natural. If you're here, silent, present, you may get a sense of the presence. The presence of what? What does presence mean, for heaven's sake? Stillness, silence, space, freedom, spirit, God. You don't have to believe, dear. It's just common sense. Feel it. Open your senses. There it is. This invisible presence of God. What else? Yes, there's the visible presence of Phil just standing over there behind the camera, the visible presence of the river here and me here, but we're all contained in this invisible presence. Infinite spirit, God. In the old-fashioned English prayer book, there's a very, very good phrase talking about the the rituals of the church, and it describes them as the outer and visible symbols of inward, invisible grace. And that is what this world is, an outer and visible symbol of inner, invisible grace, which is the radiance of God. Is meditation a void? Well, in one sense it is a void because there are no things in it. But it's the fullest void you could ever imagine because it is fulfillment. It is the substance that, it's like the air in balloons. What's a balloon without any air in it? It's just a bit of rubber, isn't it? A flat bit of rubber in the garbage. So that void that you're talking about is really the spirit which gives life to matter, which is otherwise just like that bit of shriveled balloon. Keep going into the void, Juan, I know your name. Keep going into it, my dear, and gradually you will find that the void is the reality, and the things become ever more the empty shells without the fulfillment of which without the fulfillment of what you're calling the void are lifeless. Do you want me to go on, Phil?
I'm going to record our friends here. Just a moment.
Just consider, friends, jumping into for all you know, bottomless lake in search of an object, or rather that you can't see it, and how are you going to get it back onto the shore without having? How can it happen? How can that dog do it?
No, finish.
Naturalist. No problem. Doesn't, not a shred of fear, anticipation. Opens his mouth. If you or I opened our mouths underwater, we'd drown, wouldn't we? Runs back to his master. Why? Because he loves him. He might have been trained as well, but there we are. Can I believe in spirit but not God? John asks. Well, I suggest the same thing, isn't it? How do we cope, control? Ah, that's a good one. You don't try to control anything. Control is the opposite of being free. Now, one of the absolute features of spirit is that it's free. Just look, here now, in this presence, I can move my hand this way or that way. I can say different words. I can sit down, I can stand up. There's no compulsion whatsoever, is there? It's total freedom. Don't try to control anything. You might find yourself in trouble because there's a naturally controlling, because you see the river is kept within its banks naturally, isn't it? The trees are kept rooted in the ground naturally. Consider nature, and then consider controlling. How do you deal with cruel words and judgment of others? Does it get easier? Maybe, Stephen, maybe it does. You get it, especially if you get exposed to the public like I'm doing. Yeah, there are always a few unpleasant comments. Oh dear, you learn to take them in your stride. That's life. Try not to worry about it. It's difficult when it undermines your own confidence, and you can lose the way. That's why I've always found it the best help I've ever received in life is getting away from people, going outside, preferably up into the hills or into the fields, and reminding myself of this natural presence in which I've always felt comforted, reassured that I'm back where I belong, not back into the wobbly world of people's opinions. That's why I like to say on these videos, keep your feet on the ground. It's very good advice. Keep your feet on the ground, my dears. And now I apologize for going on so long, but I hope it's been useful. Let's come back to being at rest. Isn't it wonderful when the words stop and we can just rest naturally? There we have the completely natural blessing which we might imply when we say the words, God bless you. Until another day.